One of my friends' moms was like, have you ever considered being a real estate agent? And I was like, as a matter of fact, I have not, because I had a lot of limiting beliefs just on my own that I had to have letters behind my name to be successful. And by letters, it would be MD. I'm a big believer that understanding that something can work and understanding how something does work are two very different things. The very first deal, I partnered with Braden on a deal, and it was a flip.
What went wrong? What went right? How'd you do on it?
We did great. We got paid to make a lot of mistakes.
Okay. I love it. Do you remember how much you actually made on the flip?
We ended up making, I think, $70,000.
Oh my goodness.
That's a lot of money to make a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
Like, that's a lot of money for not wanting to do it again. It's a lot more than agent commission.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I can sell 2 houses and make that much money. You would need to own real estate as an agent. You need to understand how it works on a personal level. When it's your money in the game, your money at stake, because that makes you better.
What does it take to be successful as a real estate agent?
The first thing that I would say is...
This is the Better Life Podcast with Brandon Turner and my good friend and colleague,
Cam Cathcart.
I've never called you a colleague before.
I liked it.
Yeah, hey, colleague Cam. Colleague Cam.
Ooh.
That could be an Instagram handle. Colleague Cam. Ken, sounds like.
Colleague Cam.
Colleague, yeah. What's up, man? What's new in your world? You buying real estate?
Yes, we just closed on a property.
Congratulations.
Yes.
Single family house or?
Single family house, man. That's what I do.
Single family Cam. I just didn't have a
Single family Cam, colleague Cam.
Single fam Cam. That's it. Single fam Cam.
I'm changing my Instagram
You
handle
should.
right now
Single
before
fam
this
Cam.
airs.
All right, tell me about the deal. Good?
It was great.
You sell it or you buying it? I mean,
we own it right now.
Okay.
We're gonna flip it.
Okay.
It was rough getting it to the closing table. I almost lost a relationship with the wholesaler, but we figured it out.
You got it worked out.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Most deals have some hair on it, but you work your way through it and you get through it.
Yeah, well, what happened is it was an assignment from a wholesaler, and title was just a little backed up, and the wholesaler was there, thought he was getting a $20,000 assignment. The seller was there thinking they were going to get cash for their house. Literally the last second, title comes to us and is like, we just found out that there's HOA liens on the property. There was nothing that we could have done to change it, but it still is the seller that doesn't really know that. The wholesaler knew that, was just like, oh, I thought I was going to get a $20,000 check today. Got delayed for a couple weeks until we figured that out, and now we're good to go. Closed on it, and everybody's happy now.
Congrats, man.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Well, speaking of closing on deals, today we're talking with a real estate investor and agent, Millie Pendola. It's a great talk. We covered a lot of stuff about like her first flip where she got paid. I think her quote was, I got paid to make a lot of mistakes. I thought that was really good. She tells a great analogy and story around leadership and what leadership actually is, and it might be different than what you're thinking.
That was my favorite part.
Yeah, that was legit. That comes later in this episode. I think you're gonna love that. We talk a lot about what it takes to build a rental empire. She's got 7 units, I think, at this point.
Yeah.
So she's been doing it for 3 years. So I love that it's a tangible, like this is a real person with a real job doing real estate and building financial freedom.
She's only been doing it for 3 years. Too.
Yeah.
That's the amazing part.
Yeah. So I love episodes like this where they're just, they're so real and raw and amazing. And Millie's just awesome. So I'm excited for y'all to hear that. And without further ado,
let's do it.
Let's bring in Millie Pendola. This episode is brought to you by our friends at TurboTenant and Ballpoint Marketing. These 2 companies are big supporters of the show, and they know how to work with real estate investors and help real estate investors grow their businesses. So be sure to stay tuned to hear how you can get discounts and free stuff from them both. And as you probably know, all the profits from the show go to charities of the guest choosing. So when you listen to the sponsors on the show and you work with these hand-chosen by me sponsors, you're actually doing good for the world. Now let's get to the show. Millie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Good. So I know you as several things. I know you're a real estate investor. I know you're an agent that helps a lot of both homeowners and real estate investors. I know that you are a mom and you got an amazing little kid. We hung out last night. I know birthday today of your daughter, and you're still here. That's
still here.
Yeah, you're amazing. I know you are a Better Life Tribe member, and I know you were at the summit last year, and we hung out a little bit. But take me back before all of that. Who was Millie Pendola? Pendola.
I was, going back to my childhood, I am a product of small town USA.
Okay.
I was born and raised in the South and in Northeast Tennessee.
Really?
Yes, sir. So, that was evidence of my Southernness right there. Yes, sir.
Yes,
so we still live in Northeast Tennessee and grew up with a very quintessential Southern childhood. My dad was or is a doctor.
Oh, no way.
And my mom was a stay-at-home mom. And I would say that I had a very quintessential childhood, had a very Christ-centered education through like elementary school and high school. And in alignment with the traditional Southern values, we did not talk about religion, politics, or finances at the dinner table.
Yeah.
So my introduction to the real estate investing world did not come until I was an adult.
Okay.
But a lot of the things that we get from our parents are caught and not taught.
Yeah, it's so true.
And so one of the things that I saw my dad do well as a child was he was a really big impact maker in our community. And he, as a physician, we would go and like work in his office at like 12 years old because my dad was really big in making sure that we had a really good like work ethic. And so we would go literally since I was 12, we've worked in his office like in the summers, and we would go and like do all of the things that the staff like didn't want to do. We would file all the files for the patient charts and do all the things. And I noticed that every single patient my dad saw left smiling. And they would always like, my dad is a neurologist, just for context. So he's like not a doctor people want people to go see. So he's dealing with people's like lives and giving out diagnoses that aren't necessarily advantageous to people's health. And people would still leave smiling. And I was like, I want to be like that whenever I grow up. And so he had one patient come and bring him like a Civil War sword.
Oh, wow.
And so they would like bring him gifts and just leave smiling. And I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to be like that.
Is he still with us today?
He is. Oh, yeah. I said
Awesome.
was. I keep saying was. And he's actively
He's still
alive.
an awesome dude. Okay.
He's still awesome. And so I wanted to have the same impact as a young person.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
What lessons did you learn? And before we get into real estate,
Sure.
What lessons did you learn from your parents that now have made you a better mom to your kid?
That is a great question. I think the first thing is having a strong relationship with the Lord. They instilled that very, very early on. And I think hiding the word in your heart is so important, and just building a foundation that can withstand anything. And whenever like your identity is found in Christ, that nothing around you can really shake you. And that has been the biggest legacy that they have left for me and that I want to leave for my daughter.
That's beautiful.
My mom, she was so adamant about that growing up, and I hated her. No, hated's a strong word, but I was so annoyed with her. Every morning she'd wake me up with a Bible verse, and then she'd pack school lunches, and then on the napkin she'd write a Bible verse, and I'm trying to hide it from my friends. But now looking back, like I know the Bible through and through and know so many verses, not because I wanted to, but because I just read them all the time, or I'd hear her saying it over and over again, and it has been so beneficial as an adult.
There's a line that's, I've hidden your word in my heart. It's like, I've hidden your word in my lunch.
Yeah, exactly. Like she literally on my
book your mom's going to write. I've hidden your word in your lunch.
Did you ever, did you guys ever see there was the Instagram, he was a dad and he wrote like his daughter a note every day and he would post pictures of it. It's a really cool Instagram account. But that's what my mom did for me. But it was just Bible verses every single day. Yeah,
that's cool.
It was a lot of fun.
Very cool.
She was great. Even though 17-year-old me didn't like opening up a little lunch with a Bible verse on it in front of all my friends. But
I love that. I think that's so great. And my mom definitely did similar things. But I would say another thing that they did was they had unwavering support of me, regardless of like, they didn't have any evidence to support it. Yeah. But they believed in me like unconditionally. And as I moved into my career as an agent and stuff like that, like they had no evidence that I would be good at what I do. Yeah. And they believed in me, and their unwavering support absolutely is something that I credit my success with. Yeah.
That's cool. So what came first? Agenting? Is that a word? Agenting? Agenting? Agenting or investing?
It's definitely agenting.
Agenting came first?
Yeah.
Okay. And how did that come about? Where did that idea come from?
That's a great question. So my introduction to real estate actually happened a couple years prior. After I had gotten married and had my child, I actually worked in a law firm, and we did estate planning, tax law, corporate law, and estate administration. And so my first introduction to real estate actually was in that realm. And so we're handling what I would consider asset disposition. So we were setting up trusts, LLCs, corporations, all of those things for people. And as the drafter of these documents, you get a very unique understanding of how things work. Because I'm a big believer that understanding that something can work and understanding how something does work are two very different things.
Yeah.
And so understanding, you can understand that a trust is a good vehicle and you can understand how it works. And those are two very different skill sets. And so I got a really unique experience in the disposition side of assets, be it stocks, bonds, mutual funds, real estate, bank accounts, businesses, stuff like that, in the estate planning world, because we were having conversations with people and how they wanted their assets to be disposed of post-mortem, right? So that's a heavy conversation to be having with clients on a day in and day out basis because you're dealing with death and no one likes to talk about death. So having these conversations, you get very familiar with how these different vehicles work and drafting deeds, and you understand the importance of vesting, the importance of how ownership is held instead of just that it's held, and all of the ways that those can affect how those assets are disposed of. So that was my first introduction to real estate. And I noticed, like everyone else has this epiphany, everyone who is rich and has net worth owns real estate, right? So
the story is so common. The number of CPAs who then became real estate investors, lawyers became real estate investors. They're like, hey, there's a trend here.
Exactly. And at that time I was 22. So I was still, and I'm just 29. So
are you really?
Yeah.
That's great.
So that was my first real introduction into real estate investing.
You've only been investing for 7 years.
I've only been investing for 3 because that's how long I've been an agent.
You're killing it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll get to that. That's great.
So so my introduction to real estate actually happened after my divorce. And I moved back home from Knoxville, where I was living at the time. And one of my friend's moms was like, have you ever considered being a real estate agent? And I was like, as a matter of fact, I have not. Because I had a lot of limiting beliefs just on my own that I had to have letters behind my name to be successful. And by letters, it would be MD, like doctor, or JD as an attorney. And so I decided to pursue real estate just as an opportunity to have more time with my kid and stuff like that, which we all know is the biggest fallacy of them all. It's like
jokes on you.
Jokes on me. I actually work 80 hours a week now. Yeah. But it's it has been a really neat fit because of my background with the estate planning for 3.5 years and understanding all the vehicles on the disposition side. Moving into asset acquisition was a really easy transition. And the skill sets that I learned from that absolutely transferred into me being a great agent.
That's cool.
Yeah.
All right, before we get into the investing side of things, and I do have some questions about the agent side as well, I do want to get to this week's show sponsor. So on the show, 100% of the ad revenue goes directly toward a charity of the guest choosing. So where are we throwing all the money from this week's episode?
So I was an equestrian for all of my life until I became an adult and stopped competing. But Reins is a therapeutic riding center that helps people who have disabilities, cognitively, emotionally, mental, whatever, to use equine therapy as an opportunity to cope and to grow.
Wow, that's amazing. Reins, it's called.
Reins. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's where we'll send the money from this week's episode. So today's show sponsor is... All right, so I look down at my phone and I see this text. You need to call me. Your house is on fire. And I sat there and I'm looking at the screen and I'm wondering, is this some kind of a joke? The guy who sent it was a tenant I had been trying to evict for months and he hadn't paid him forever. He had trashed the house. I mean, it was disgusting. And the guy himself was, pretty darn unstable. Now, of course, I call him after that text and it goes to voicemail. Great. Now, a few minutes later, I get a call from the fire department. Yep, my first ever rental house was burning down. So how did I get myself in that situation? Well, I didn't screen that tenant. I put in someone I thought would be good, and he was until he wasn't. Now, this is over a decade ago, and since then, I've learned how to properly vet a tenant, and that's through Turbo Tenant, which makes screening for both background and credit really, really easy. But it gets even better. TurboTenant also helps you market your rentals to like dozens of the largest sites, including apartments.com and Redfin. You can create custom leases that cover all your rental laws, and you can even use TurboTenant for your automatic rent payments. All of this for less than the cost of your Netflix subscription. Yeah, I know, crazy. Save time, save money, and save your sanity by using TurboTenant. And because you're so darn cute, you can use the code Brandon10 to save 10%. So check it out at turbotenant.com/betterlife. Hey, so many of you have heard me tell that story about how I bought my daughter Rosie a fourplex, like a rental property, the week she was born, and how we put it on an 18-year, mortgage payoff plan so it'll be paid off when she graduates from high school. So essentially, my tenants are paying for Rosie's entire college. Now that's pretty awesome, right? Not to mention, it's also making almost like $1,000 a month in cash flow. That's double awesome. But I don't think I've ever shared really exactly how I found that deal. So here it goes. I found it through direct mail marketing. And here's how. I simply built a high quality lead list of a lot of names and addresses of potential sellers, and I sent out a whole bunch of mail to every person on that list. And then I talked on the phone to a ton of people, and then I finally got one person that was interested enough to sell me the property, and I got a deal at a great price. So building that giant lead engine like that, I mean, it works, but it takes a ton of time, knowledge, and effort, which can really slow down an investor's growth, which is why I reached out to my friend Ryan with Ballpoint Marketing. I asked him to sponsor this show because they're the best at doing everything that I just talked about. Like, they're literally going to help you build your entire lead engine. You're gonna get a one-on-one call where they're gonna help you figure out what you want and then build your lead list for you. Their robots are going to handwrite the postcards with a real pen, which is super cool. They're gonna send them out, and they'll even answer the phone calls for you. Plus, they'll help you track it all inside of a CRM that they create for you. I know, it's crazy, crazy awesome. And it's going to help you land way more deals consistently. And because you're awesome and because you listen to this show, you're going to get a discount when you tell them that I sent you, or just use code Brandon when checking out with them. I love Ballpoint Marketing and officially recommend them to all my friends and masterminds. So if you're ready to kick your deal flow up a notch, getting more quality leads without pulling your hair out, just go to ballpointmarketing.com/betterlife, or just shoot me a DM on Instagram with the word ballpoint, like one word, ballpoint, and I'll hook you up with them directly.
Millie, before I get into investing, real estate agents, who should be an agent? Who do you think makes a good agent and who makes a bad agent?
I feel like I just got put under the gun on that one.
I thought we had a great conversation about this last night. So
Okay.
I want you to share with everybody kind of what you were talking about last night.
Great agents. So what makes a good agent and what makes a bad agent? I think that this is going to be completely my opinion,
Sure.
first of all. So I'm going to denote my opinions with that context. So I think that what makes a good agent is someone who genuinely cares about the public. And there has been, I don't know if we can get into this or not, but there has been a lot of back and forth about this NAR lawsuit and a lot of upheaval and how that's going to be changing the market and stuff like that. So the outcome of the lawsuit, if you were doing your job as an agent, nothing will change for you. All it does is increase our opportunity and basically requires agents to properly disclose information to all parties.
Yeah.
And so we have to have the outcome of the suit. We have to have a buyer representation agreement before we show houses, right? Which should be a standard practice. And then the other fallout basically was that the cooperating agents commission can't be displayed on the MLS. That's it.
Yeah.
And
why are people freaking out so much about that?
Well, I think that because I think that a lot of buyer's agents were contributing their value to a buyer not having to pay them. And they were saying, oh, well, you get to use me for free.
Yeah.
You don't have to pay me. And that's where a lot of their value proposition was coming from, rather than, in my opinion, doing their job. And you have value in educating your clientele, you have value in negotiating on their behalf, you have value in advocating for them in a deal, and that value has a price tag on it. And you determine that price tag on a buyer representation agreement.
Yeah.
And there has not been a time that I have ever charged a buyer $0 on a buyer representation agreement because they understood the value that I was bringing. Now, they did not end up having to pay me because the sellers did pay my compensation, but they were fully aware that if a seller was not going to pay my commission, or the cooperating agent, I should say, was going to pay my commission, that they were going to be responsible for that amount of money. And so if all parties had been properly disclosed, then there would be no change. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Do you think that there's going to be, I know it's trying to do away with this, but a lot more agents now that aren't going to work as hard for their buyers because they're going to call the selling agent, say, how much commission are you offering? Since it's not listed anymore, they're going to find out, oh, you're not offering any sort of compensation to me, so I'm not going to even show my buyer your house.
Yeah, I think that it only is going to create an ethical dilemma for people who only are interested in themselves.
Yeah.
The actual dilemma is not going to come for people who understand their value proposition and can accurately represent that to a buyer and tell them, this is what my value is worth. You can either choose to move forward with me as your agent, or you can choose to not. And if you don't, then you may not get the same level of care and representation.
Yeah.
So there's always been, and I think there's a lot of confusion as well because at least in Tennessee, because that's the only state that I can speak for. So in a listing agreement, a listing agent charges a seller a certain amount in their commission. And then on the form, you disclose to the seller as the agent how much of that commission is going to a buyer's agent. The seller is not technically paying a buyer's agent's commission. They are disclosed as to how much of the percentage they are paying to their agent is going to be given to a cooperating broker. But the compensation agreements is between two brokers. It is not between a buyer's agent and the seller. So there is a little bit of confusion in just all of the misinformation happening right now as to like what actually is going on, because a seller technically does not pay a buyer's agent. The broker, the listing broker, is the one who pays a buyer broker.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So there's just a lot of misinformation, at least in the state of Tennessee. Like there's a cooperation agreement and a compensation agreement between two brokers. It's not between a buyer's agent and the seller.
Yeah. That makes sense.
So
Do you think investors, if people are going to get into investing, should they become a real estate agent?
Well, there's a lot of people who ask that question. And I think that it depends on what amount of business you're planning on doing on behalf of yourself, because your E&O insurance, which is like errors and omissions insurance, will not cover you if 25% of your business is your own.
Really?
Wow. So that's a fun fact that a lot of people don't know. And it's really important that if you plan on just doing business on behalf of yourself, that your insurance will not cover you if you're only doing it on your own behalf.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So you got to be covered by that. You got to be doing other people's stuff. So maybe it's like, because a lot of people only want their license just to save on the commission. And maybe it's still worth it. The insurance won't cover you, but you can still save commission if you're doing high enough volume to make the cost worth it. Or is it just not worth it at all? What do you think?
The problem is that with all of the access that we have nowadays, the only advantage you would have is the MLS and access to documents.
Yeah.
So I think that would be completely preferential to the individual person.
Were you ever an agent?
No, never was. I've taken the class 3 times
and just never
took the test.
Never took the test?
Yeah, because it's always like I get to the end of the class. Twice I've taken the gun all the way through the class, and I'm always like, oh, okay, I got to schedule that. But I got to study first. I'll do it next week. And then like a week goes by. And then
you could probably just go take the test.
I know. So I took a practice test online and I got like a 78%. And I think 80 is passing in Hawaii. And I was like, all right, I could probably just go do it. And then every time I just don't do it because I'm like, I don't want to do it. Like, I don't need to be an agent. The only reason I'd be an agent is for referral fees. Because then if I could be like, hey, everybody, if you want to use a Brandon Turner approved real estate agent, go talk to Millie.
That's a great idea. You should totally do that.
I would have made tens of millions of dollars over the last decade if I would have done that. Yeah. But every time I think about that, I'm like, well, I'm kind of past that. I wouldn't get that anymore. And then like a year goes by, I'm like, oh, I should have done it. So I may do it at some point.
You should totally do
I just got a little. It's always the bottom, like the thing that gets knocked off the chopping block, whatever. Like first in my life. So if I ever find myself just like, oh, I'm bored. Everything's just smooth. Yeah,
go be an agent.
I don't think you're bored. You're bored.
Yeah, I'm not bored yet. So I got, I got more ways to make money, but I'm not one. You were never an agent, were you?
I was never an agent.
Was Lexi?
No,
Okay.
no. But one of the things we found out was like really early on is how much a good agent matters.
Yeah.
And
I'm never going to be good enough to
No,
matter,
I don't.
like,
Yeah.
for myself.
Well, and
But you don't need to be.
I don't want to put in the time and the effort.
I'd rather hire a good agent. I'd rather hire you, Millie, and then you can take care of my stuff, and then I don't have to deal with being good.
Exactly.
That's exactly how we were. Where we've had some incredible agents work with us, and they're fielding all of the calls.
Yeah.
They're doing everything for us, and we would rather just do that and pay, their 3 or 6%, 6%, whatever it is. And well, ours gives us a cheaper deal than that. Yeah. I don't know if that's allowed anymore. I don't know. I didn't read all of the NAR stuff, but
it basically let the public know that their commission is negotiable, as it has always been.
yeah. So exactly.
Which we knew that in the real estate industry, but I bet you a lot of homeowners didn't know that. They just thought that was a rule.
Yeah.
It's 6%.
Yeah.
This is what it is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we do like one to our agent and then 3 to the buyer's agent. Typically.
Absolutely.
So,
When
because
you do volume.
Yeah.
You can do volume. You can do whatever you want there.
That's awesome.
That makes sense. All right. So last question on the agent thing before we move on to investing. If I'm an agent, I'm a new agent, I want to make money. Here's what. Let me preface it with this way. I'm a big believer. Like everyone has to have a source of income.
Absolutely.
If you want to invest in real estate, you got to have some money coming in. So you can flip houses like Cam or wholesale deals.
Yep.
You can be an agent, which is a great way to get into the industry if you have the right personality and right whatever. You could go work your 9-to-5 job and just have any job. Like you need something for income, right, coming in. So, and I think being a real estate agent is a really good way to do that if you can do it. So, let's say somebody wants to be an agent so they can make money, have a somewhat flexible schedule, even though you work a ton, but at least like you can, take your kid with you maybe if you need to. Yeah. So maybe not. No. But let's say, what does it take to be successful as a real estate agent?
The first thing that I would say is a mindset shift.
Okay.
Is going to be the first thing. Because switching from a W-2 mindset to a 1099 mindset is a huge shift.
It's huge.
And I would say that shifting your definition of success from, how should I say this? From outcome orientation to process driven is going to be a huge factor for you. So I would say instead of a skill, I would say a framework shift is going to probably be the highest opportunity for a new agent. And shifting out of money at some point is going to just become it's going to become a thing. Yeah. It is not the goal. It is something that comes and goes, and it is not ever going to be, it's just a resource. Yeah. At some point in your career, it becomes just a resource, not the goal. Because whenever you care about people and you honor people and you act respectfully and are willing to collaborate with cooperating agents on making a deal happen, money follows.
Yep. Yeah.
Money should never be the goal. And obviously, we all need it to live. I'm not saying that we should not work for money, because knowing your value is very important. But I think that shifting from goal-driven and outcome-oriented to process-oriented is going to be something that serves you really well.
Which I think it applies to almost every area of life, right? Like, it's like, I want to lose 20 pounds. Okay, well, great. We all do, right? But what are you going to do about it? Like, so you shift your focus from goals to process.
Yep.
One of my favorite quotes that I kind of live my life by comes from Hal Elrod in one of the Miracle Morning books. And he says, every result you desire is preceded by a process required to produce the result.
I love that.
Yeah, and that's so good. It's like everything you want in life, there is some kind of process that if you just define it, and then I think the quote goes on and says, if you define it and commit to it for an extended period of time, the results take care of themselves.
I love it.
Yeah, and I live by that quote, because in every area, anytime I'm frustrated or I'm like, there's a thing I want, I'm always like, okay, let's go back to process. What can I do? Yeah. Which is, why I track my habits every day, and why I, try to get my team to be like, okay, yes, we want to buy real estate. Mm-hmm. How many offers are we making? Yep. How many deals are we analyzing? Like, get back to that, those KPIs, and then life figures itself out.
It's so true.
Yeah. All right. Invest. Okay, so let's keep on the agent thing for a minute. If you want to be a successful agent, shift your mindset.
Mindset first.
How do you get clients?
Get leads. You got to tell people about yourself.
Okay.
You got to let people know what you're doing, because that's the only way that you're going to get a lead.
Yeah.
And a lead, I guess we have to define what that is first. A lead is someone that you can contact.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
because you can't consider like an Instagram follower a lead, but you can consider your contact list in your phone a lead, right? Because you have an opportunity to contact that person through some sort of vehicle. And I would say starting with like warm leads is the best way to do it. Let your sphere of influence know what you're doing. And I think one of the biggest hurdles that new agents have to combat is, well, you don't know what you're doing, right? You're new. We can't expect you to like represent us well. And I think one of the biggest value propositions that new agents do have is that they have time. They're going to have the oversight of a broker, obviously. So they're not going to mess anything up terribly. But that's their biggest value proposition. And I would say that there's a lot to be said, especially for people who like to be handheld, first-time home buyers, people who require a little bit more of your time as an agent. Working with someone like me who will probably, I set calls once a week. That's been the highest. I'll actually give a secret away on this podcast. One of the highest leverage things that I've done in my business that has given me the highest, what I would say, what's it called?
ROI maybe?
ROI? No, conversion rate.
Okay, sure.
Highest conversion rate. It from a client to or customer to a client is I set weekly calls with all of my clients. So I read a book. I read Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. Loved that book. And my one big takeaway from that was people don't like questioning what is going on. And he was talking about how he was in a high stakes hostage negotiation, and he told the people on the other end of the negotiation, I'm going to call you every hour on the hour, no matter what. Whether I have good news, bad news, or no news, I'm going to call you. And I was like, okay, I'm going to use this in my business. And so every single client I have, whether it's a high-level investor or a brand new home buyer, I say, what day of the week works best for you for me to call you? Because we're going to have a call every single week, whether we have an update, no update, good, bad, ugly, we're going to have a conversation. We can talk in between that time, of course, but we're going to have a set meeting.
That's great. I really like that.
And
when you don't hear from your agent, you just assume that they're off playing golf and sitting on the beach,
or like, ignoring you, not doing whatever the case may be. But that has been the highest conversion thing that I've done in my business is telling people we will always have a time. We will always
work for raising capital. If you have like private lenders, we talk every week. I'll give you an update on the deal. And it could be a 10-minute long thing. Just like, here's what's going on.
Literally.
And everyone just wants to be like, oh yeah, okay, good. Yeah, things are good. Things are moving. Even like, oh, things are bad, but at least they called me. Yeah. How much more successful would we be if we all did that with our, crazy good at it. Thank you.
Cool.
All right. Moving on to investing. Where'd the idea of investing then come from? Were you always planning to do that, get into rental properties, or where'd that come from?
My introduction to real estate investing came after I became an agent. And learned about the Bigger Pockets podcast. Listened to you guys.
All right.
And decided to cut my teeth a little bit and do the things that buy the assets that I was selling.
Yeah. Okay. So what was the very first deal? How'd you get into it?
Very first deal. I partnered with Braden on a deal, and it was a flip. And I'm never flipping again. I'm joking. I probably will.
This flip.
Yeah. So this flip was an off-market deal. I actually found it as an expired listing. And
hey, for those who don't know what that is, would you mind explaining that? Because I love expired listings.
Yeah. So an expired listing is just a listing that the listing agreement between a listing agent and the seller expired. And so the MLS automatically clicks it over to something called an expired listing. And it just shows a status instead of saying active or pending. It just says expired.
Okay. Can you only find that as a real estate agent, or is there ways if you're not?
That's a great question.
Ooh, that is a great question. I think that agent only, agent only access on the MLS.
So you have to have an agent who could go and look for them, give you a list of them, and then you can go call them.
Absolutely. That's a great tip, actually.
Great tip. Yeah. All right.
If you want expired listings, find an agent.
Yeah, find an agent. All right. So you find this off-market deal.
Yeah, I found this off-market deal. And this actually is a super cool story, both for my own deal and the power of real estate investing. Do y'all care if I get into that?
I would love to.
Okay, cool. So these particular sellers had inherited 3 properties all right next to each other. And they had some personal life things going on. And I got to go up to them and have a discussion with them about how these inherited properties that were completely paid for could actually help their financial situation. And after a lot of discussion with them, they told me that no agent had ever sat down and discussed with them how these properties could actually help their position financially and ultimately like their mental health as well. Just not having to worry about the stress of, the things that were going on in their lives anymore and stuff like that. So we sort of strategized at that point about how we could leverage these properties that they had inherited to put them ultimately in a better financial position and actually get them another house that they were wanting to move into. So it was really, really neat the way that it all worked. We sold off 2 of the houses, the one that they were not currently living in, and took care of the financial responsibilities that they had. And then me and Braden bought the 3rd house that they were currently living in. And they were able to use all of that money as a down payment and then as a reserve fund for themselves in their new property that they were buying. So it ended up being like a win-win, and it was a really cool deal.
I love that.
Oh, it was amazing.
That's my favorite part about just going direct to seller is because there's so much opportunity there to help people. And if you can figure out like what are their biggest pain points or their problems, and you can solve those, the house is yours, and it's so rewarding getting to go through that process.
Yeah, I'm sure somebody's figured this out already, so I'm not probably saying anything brand new, but maybe this will help somebody. From a marketing standpoint, what would be really cool is if you could probably automate this, is get a list automated of people who are inherited a property, right? So when a probate goes through or whatever happens, somebody inherits a property, they get a postcard in the mail that says something like, what to do with your inherited property, free 60-minute video.
I love that.
Right? And they have to scan the QR code. It's right on the mailer, right? They scan the QR code. What to do, ask for your name and email.
Love that.
So they can send you the video. They put their name and email address. Now the video is actually a really good, here, you could turn this into a rental property. You could make cash flow. And here's all the tips on how to do that. Number 2, you could sell it. You could fix it up and sell it on, and make money and kind of flip it. Number 3, you could sell it to a company like ours, and we'll take it off your hands for no, now you give them like multiple options. You're educating them. You also have their email and phone number, maybe their name, and you can automate every piece of that entire process, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And you just have leads coming in all the time. Like, I love that idea.
The best house buying companies, direct to seller, and the best real estate agents that I know, they are education companies first. Every single time, where they educate the seller on all of the different aspects of selling a home and the different scenarios with it. And I'm very open with like my direct to seller leads, where it's like, hey, you can do this, this, and this. Here's what I think you will make. And honestly, mine's always the lowest amount of money. But there's the service that here's what you have to do to go with me, which is nothing, like sign this contract. Here's what you have to do for this, this, and this. And let them make a decision. But they feel so much more comfortable, loved, respected in that versus trying to knock them down on a price or something like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if I was a real estate agent, I think I'd get like a billboard that said something like how to sell, whatever city I was in, like how to sell it would be a billboard. It would say how to sell your Austin property for 10% above market value. And it would just be a QR code. And they click on it because, again, I'm trying to automate everything. So they get the QR code, put their name, phone number, email. They then get this this video on how, hey, here's 3 clients that we help sell their house for 10% over market. And we got 18 offers on this one, 4 on this one, and 6 on this one. How do we do that? Well, I'm an amazing agent, and I help them remodel this one thing that I know this thing. Here, I knew how to market it better. Here, I knew how to do this. So you're giving them value. You're saying, here's how you can do it yourself, but I can do it for you, and it doesn't cost you any. I mean, it's just, you're going to have an agent anyway. Yeah. And so now you have this automated, again, everything I'm doing, like I always think, how do I get this on repeat over and over and over? A deal flow. How do I get a deal flow? Just coming in. So anyway,
I love that.
Idea.
I think that you are the king of systems. It sounds like that is amazing. Like
systems. All right. So back to you though. So the flip, what went wrong? What went right? How'd you do on it?
Okay. Well, we did great. We got paid to make a lot of mistakes.
Okay.
I love it.
So we ended up holding the property a lot longer than we had intended.
Which is pretty normal.
Yeah. Well, that's great. The other one, finding your people, finding contractors, managing contractors. You learn a lot about yourself.
Yeah, well, it's so fun.
You learn a lot about yourself whenever you're going through things. And like I said, knowing if that something will work and knowing how something works are 2 very different things. Yeah. And so understanding that a flip works is very different than understanding how flips work.
Yeah.
And so the experience side, I think, is completely necessary as an agent. Going back to your previous question, you need to own real estate as an agent.
Yeah.
You need to understand how it works. You need to, on a personal level, when it's your money in the game, your money at stake, and it's because that makes you better. Because you know how to advocate for people, you know how personal the decision is, and it breeds a level of empathy that you would not otherwise have if you don't understand how the mechanics work in the game. And so what we learned was that your people matter, and that having good people around you will be a determiner of your success and your failure. And luckily, we were very successful in the flip, in spite of my many opportunities for learning, and learning that my management style needed lots of development. So Braden was he's a very good manager of people. And he is someone that I respect a great deal in how he handles people and treats them. And he definitely has made me a better person.
Where did you guys do that? Was that in your market in Tennessee?
Yeah.
Cool.
East Tennessee.
Do you remember how much you actually made on the flip?
We ended up making, I think, $70,000.
Oh my goodness. That's amazing.
That's a lot of money to make a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
Like,
It's a lot of money.
But at the end of the day, you said, I don't know if I want to do that. Like, I don't want to do flips anymore. Like, that's a lot of money for not wanting to do it again. It's a lot more than an agent commission.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I can sell 2 houses and make that much money.
That's true. It's a lot less risk and a lot less contractors. Yeah.
But Braden, like I said, as long as he can handle the management side of the people, we're good. We're good.
Braden, who's Braden?
Braden is my partner on the deal, and he's also my man.
Your man.
He's my man.
You're that's awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
So after that, what happened? After the flip?
After that, I told him we were never doing it again. And then we got paid, and I was like, well, maybe we will. So after that, we just decided to shift our focus to buy and hold.
Okay.
So we strictly we try not to sell anything that we have at this point. So we've got a couple properties in Colorado, and we are renovating 2 properties in East Tennessee, and we've got another medium-term rental that's about to go live in the next week.
Cool.
Yeah.
Why Colorado? Is he
That's
from
where
there?
Braden's from.
Okay. So, yeah. Very cool. What part of Colorado?
He's from Denver proper.
Okay.
And he went to school in Southwest Colorado, and he's got a house down in Uray. That's a long-term rental.
Yeah.
So.
Very cool.
Yeah.
What have you learned about buy and hold investing that would help our audience?
What have I learned? Screening tenants is very important.
So important.
And I would say, again, the people, like literally your team is going to define your success or your failure. And building a good team out who you know has your back is the most important thing in anything. Your property managers, your agents, your partners in the deal, like everything is just that they are critical. Your community is critical.
Yeah. It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you manage your properties? Are you self-managing?
We're actually about to self-manage all of them.
Okay.
We're going to in-house the management. So that's our next adventure.
Yeah. Why is that? Why not just find a property manager?
That is a great question.
Yeah.
And that's a decision Braden made, and we're going to go with it.
I am a huge advocate for self-managing.
Really?
Oh, I think people that have outsourced it, especially like with single family homes, if I was Brandon and had 100 unit buildings,
I
I would
don't outsource mine. Almost all mine's in house.
Well, I just
built a big company.
Yeah, and that's what we've done.
Nobody cares about your properties like you do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Real estate is our most it's honestly our only asset. We don't have a huge stock portfolio or anything else. It's real estate. That's how we're going to retire. That's how we're going to provide for our kids, pay for our kids' college. It is the most valuable thing to us, like physically. Obviously, our families and all that stuff is more valuable, but nobody's going to care about it. Nobody's going to take care of it like you are. And for me, I'm like, why would I trust somebody else to do this? And obviously, there's ways that you can vet property management companies and ask the right questions and make sure that they're doing it well. But for us, we're like, why would we not? And we can save money. Like we've built a team to be able to do that for us, and it saves us money versus 10% a month plus, and they're filling vacancies first month's rent. That gets so expensive.
It really does.
Yeah.
So
That's cool. All right. So
I'm
what
excited for you guys.
was the best buy and hold that you've got so far?
The best buy and hold
I know
is
you're working on a few, so maybe you can include those. But
so the best buy and hold that we have, it's going to be going live in the next
That's the
couple weeks.
midterm,
The little mini.
medium, yeah.
Yes. Oh, I'm so excited
tell us
about
about
it.
that one.
Yeah. So that deal was also an off-market deal.
Okay.
And it was actually, so this is a really important, the most important lesson that I learned from this deal was the importance of being a person in your community that people enjoy working with.
Yeah.
And so this was actually a broker in Virginia who is, a fellow agent in my MLS.
Mhm.
And he had this opportunity and I said, I'll go ahead and take it and I'm going to let you represent me in the deal. So I didn't actually get a commission on that deal. And I said, you can have both. You can have a win-win because I want this deal. And that is just how we ended up getting in contract. So we I ended up negotiating a couple things in seller credits on the back end. But this property, I got it for like $100,000. So my PITI is like nothing. And that property, my contractor who I found, who is amazing and calls me every day, has great communication. He is going to be done with the rehab at the end of this week, actually, and is going to rent out for $850 a bedroom.
Wow.
It's 8 minutes away from a level 1 trauma center and is just going to be a knockout.
How many bedrooms?
Just 2.
Okay. Yeah.
Two.
So you have 2 tenants that are going to be living there. Rent by the room.
Rent
Both
by
of
the
them.
room.
You'll be at
Yeah,
$1,900
travel
a
nurses.
month and you're into it for $100,000.
Yeah.
That's not bad.
I know.
great.
Yeah, it's going to be
incredible.
great.
Yeah, I love those kind of medium-term rentals. We just had Rachel Gainsborough.
Gainsborough.
Yes, I don't want to butcher.
Gainsborough.
Yeah, Gainsborough on the podcast. That's her whole thing. She teaches midterm rentals, and they can crush it. So you're kind of combining the midterm with the rent by the bedroom.
Yeah.
Which we have a guest that we're interviewing later today. Actually,
Cool.
that's his whole thing. They're such great strategies, and you're combining them into one, and you're going to print money. So then, is the goal to do more of those? Is that what you want to do?
I would like to own more in that specific HOA. I think that's a great idea. But yeah, we'll see how this one turns out. And
What I love in this, it gets boring sometimes, but I love the idea of you find the thing that works. Like you're like, hey, this works. I can buy a house. I can rent out the bedroom separately. I can get it, medium term. Let's do 20 of them. Let's do 10 of them. Like you just rinse and repeat at that point. And your business becomes a business, not just a hobby. And so it'll be cool to see kind of where you head with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's very cool. How are you financing these right now? Just down payment normal?
Yeah.
Nothing creative and
Nothing
crazy?
creative.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, so you make money as an agent.
Yep.
And you dump it into real estate.
Absolutely.
That sounds amazing.
Yep.
How long do you think you'll be an agent for? Like, do you want to get out of that eventually? You just love doing it? And
I would like to get out of it eventually.
Okay.
I think I'm in the process of building a team because
Okay,
I currently work in 3 different markets in East Tennessee.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
And so I'm in the process of like building out just a rock star team.
Yeah.
And that has, of course, its own challenges, but that is something I would, eventually like to exit in a way and just be an investor full time.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about your just general, how you run your life. How do you balance everything from being a mom to being, and I know we talked about the how-to section. We can get into that.
Sure.
How are you a mom, an agent, flipping houses, buying the rentals? Like what's your kind of strategy in life to be able to balance it all?
All of the hats that I wear. I think one of the big shifts that I had in my mindset was, I think that a lot of times people think of balance like a scale, and that in order to be in like an equilibrium, there's not like any teetering or tottering. And I don't really adhere to that at all because for whatever reason, my brain just does not work in that way. And the idea of being balanced, like I can't be a full-time mom and a full-time worker, like an agent. That's just not possible. And the stress that would breed is not conducive to a healthy mindset. So I have learned to just be where my feet are. And if I am working, then I am working. And if I am with her, then I am with her. And so I think that is one of the mindsets and frameworks that has served me really well. And time blocking, asking for help has been something that I've had to learn how to do. And my parents, honestly, have been a huge, huge help with that. And in addition to their support of me, they are my mom's a full-time grandmother. So
that's awesome.
She helps me out a lot.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
And that's, I was just going to say, that's so hard as an agent because your phone is ringing 24/7
all the time.
Yeah.
With that.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, let's move into the how-to section of the podcast.
Okay.
What did you prepare today for how-to? What are we going to teach?
Oh, I was going to talk about how to be a better communicator and how to be a better leader.
Ooh, I love it. All right. Well, I'll let you take it away.
Absolutely. So the first thing that came to mind whenever I was preparing for this, I was going to talk about leadership. And I was like, well, how do we define leadership? Because leadership kind of is like a culmination of many skills. It's not just one thing that we can do. And I boiled it down to one thing, and that was communication. And I will give an example about how being a mom actually made me a better leader and a better communicator. And that's actually through expectation setting and as a part of communication. So there was I'll tell a story really quick just to kind of make that point. But I was taking my daughter to a really nice restaurant one time. We were in dresses. We were all dressed up and like excited to go have dinner. And she had never been to a 5-star steakhouse before. And I was just thinking about how the evening was going to go. And I was like, if she gets up and like starts dancing around, like, and I don't set the expectation of what I expect her behavior to be, and she misbehaves, and that's on me. Like, that's not fair of me to put her in a situation she's never been in and not have any sort of expectation set for her. And so what I did was, while we were driving there, I said, Sophia, we're going to an adult restaurant. This is a big girl restaurant. You're in a dress, and whenever we get there, I sort of I set the stage for her just a little bit. And I was like, whenever you get there, there's going to be a host, and they're going to seat us, and you're going to hear really soft, fun music playing and whatever. And while we're sitting down and eating, I expect you to stay in your seat, play with your coloring book that's in front of you, do whatever is put in front of you, have conversations with the adults at the table. And by the time our food comes out, you might be feeling a little antsy, and you may want to get up and dance, or you may want to get up and move. But at this restaurant, unfortunately, we cannot do that. So I'm going to need you to stay in your seat while we're there. And as I was explaining those things to her, she was like, okay, mommy, that sounds great. And then a really important key to this was I asked for verbal consent from her to abide by the rules that I set. And so I set the rules of engagement and then asked for her verbal consent. And she said, yes, mommy, I agree to play by these rules. So as dinner progresses, she gets antsy and wants to get up and play at the table. And I'm able to go back to that conversation and say, you agreed to abide by these rules. And unfortunately, if you choose to disobey, then we are going to have to get a babysitter for the next time, and you will not be able to come and experience this, because these are the rules. There are consequences for breaking those rules, and you agreed to abide by them. And so setting the rules of engagement is so critical in any realm. And that skill has served me so well as a person and as an agent and in my communication style with people, because I have the opportunity to set the rules. What are my non-negotiables? So it's been a really cool thing.
That's brilliant.
I love that. One of my favorite sayings just in business for me as a leader is resentment is always a result of unclear expectations.
Absolutely.
And I mean, I see that exactly the same thing with my kids. If I tell them like, hey, you can't say this, and do you understand if you say this, then there's going to be a punishment, then there is punishment. But if they say it and I haven't set that clear expectation and then I punish them, now they have no idea what's going on. Why did I get in trouble for doing that?
Exactly.
And same thing within business. Like, you have to do X, Y, and Z. And I'm so bad at that because I kind of fly by the seat of my pants. And
but how much better would a rehab go if it was like, you don't have to like talk down to a contractor the way we would do a kid maybe, but it's like, hey, listen here. So this is how it's going to work. This is the bid that you set. You're going to do this work by this date. Do you agree to that? And like, you just set the stage. How much better would our rehabs go if we did that?
It would
But
change
absolutely.
everything. And I love the verbal commitment from the other person.
Yeah.
Because now like they've heard it, they know it, and they've agreed to it.
Yeah.
And now you can hold them to that standard. If you never do that, then you have no standard to hold them to. And then all of a sudden there's resentment on their part and on your part.
Absolutely.
And it's only because there's just unclear expectations up front.
Absolutely.
I love that. That
And
was so
it's
good.
a verbal contract, right? It is a verbal contract on the rules of engagement. And then in peer-to-peer rather than parent to child, whenever you're dealing with, like Brandon said, contractors or with a relationship, right? Like if you're interacting in an interpersonal relationship, be it a friend or a romantic involvement, you know, hey, this is my expectation of you.
Yeah.
You know, and it becomes more of a conversation rather than like a dictatorship. But it's a, hey, like, what are your non-negotiables? What are my non-negotiables? And what are our rules of engagement? How are we going to speak about each other whenever we're not in the same room? How, you know, because they represent you, whether you're there or not. And, you know, I expect this and this and this. And, you know, there's a level of responsibility and respect there.
I love it. When it comes to even buying houses direct to seller, I set the rules of engagement beforehand. When we're on the phone, I say something along the lines of like, hey, you know, I'm coming to your house because I want to buy it. And sometimes they'll give me a price, sometimes they won't. But I'm like, if I can solve everything that you need solved and I can offer you a number that you need for your house, will you sell your house today? And even just setting those like clear expectations up front of here's why I'm coming. And if I can solve X, Y, and Z, will you sell your house? It gets me more houses because I've set clear expectations up front. And
there's no ambiguity in your purpose.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Yes.
Absolutely.
that's really good.
Yeah.
Just communication in general, like the better you can communicate, the better leader you are.
Absolutely.
And I love that you boiled down leadership to communication because it's really what it is.
Absolutely. And I think that the caveat to that, right, is whenever you adhere to the boundaries that you've set in those rules as a parent or as just a person, you create lots of stability for the other party.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Because if she misbehaved at the dinner and she was not able to come to the next dinner that we had and I had to get a babysitter, then she would understand that was the reason the reason she came was because she chose to not abide by those rules.
Yeah.
So you create stability in any relationship whenever you abide by the rules that you set. And conversely, whenever you choose to be lax with those rules and to not abide by them, it creates instability, it creates insecurity, and you frankly lose your reputation.
That's so good.
In not abiding by the rules that you yourself have set.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right, one more self-serving question before we move to the 3-2-1 pivot. Not self-serving because it's all for charity. But, why are you in the Better Life Tribe?
Why am I in the Better Life Tribe? I love it. So the first reason that I joined was because everything that the tribe stands for is in alignment with my values.
Yeah.
And my personal values, especially in my business, are empowerment through education, because the only type of clients that I would want to work with are empowered decision makers. And it's my job as the professional to educate them. And that is through a full scope of education and not through selective education. And the importance of building a legacy worth leaving, and also just living like a better life all the way around, whole life. Yeah.
I love it. Let's move on to the 3-2-1 pivot. We need music there. We don't have it yet. Someday. All right. The idea of the pivot, meaning your life is going to one direction.
Sure.
And then it shifts into another direction.
Okay.
Because of something you read, someone you met, or something you heard. So let's start with the books, things you read. What are 3 pivot books in your life?
Ooh, okay. The very first book that I would say was a pivot book for me was Atomic Habits.
So good.
And the reason for that was, has there ever been a time in your life where you've like experienced something and then you read about it and you're like, oh, that's exactly what happened to me.
Yes.
So that was Atomic Habits for me. So after I got divorced, I decided that I wanted to run a half marathon.
Oh, yeah.
And so as silly as that sounds, I had never run any significant amount of distance in my entire life. And I just decided that I wanted to do it. So I started training for this half marathon. So I joined a running club, and they met every Tuesday night, and I'm still part of that running club today. Cool. And I decided to go, and I kept going. I just kept going. Mm-hmm. And the very first running club that I went to, I couldn't run a mile. And Gretchen, who is my very dear friend still to this day, ran with me because I didn't know the route. Mm-hmm. And she stayed with me and walked with me whenever I couldn't run. And it was, obviously got better from there. That's the best part about being out of shape. You can't get any worse. So we kept training, kept running, and then we would run together on days that like running club wasn't happening. And she would train me and, get me ready for this race. And as we continued training, I started to become someone who called myself a runner at some point. And I still had weight to lose. You wouldn't have confused me for a runner by any means, but I had built evidence that I was a runner. Yeah. And every day that I ran, I had been running for probably 3 months at the time, and I had 90 days of evidence that I was a runner. So no matter what anyone said, I was a runner. Yep. Yeah. They could look at me and be like, "You don't look like a runner." And I'd be like, "That's great, but I am, because I have outworked your doubt of me." Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right? Because I have 90 days of proof that I am who I say I am. And so I think that you can stack evidence. And that was the first time. And then I read Atomic Habits, and it talks about how you can stack evidence and give yourself a vote in favor of an identity. Yep. And I was like, that's exactly what happened to me, because my habits became something that defined me. And there was a framework that I learned through that book that has served me so well and is in complete alignment with the Better Life Tribe. And that is, if someone followed me around with a camera, like no audio, and they only watched what I did, would they describe me the way that I describe myself? Would I be who I say I am to other people? And I love that frame.
I do too.
Because runners, the only thing they do is run, right? A runner is defined by their habit of running. And something that I love about the Better Life Tribe is that, we are able to define, being a world-class mom, right? That means a lot of things for a lot of different people. And so you get to determine what success looks like in some of these more ambiguous titles and identities. Does being a world-class mom mean never skipping a soccer game? Or does it mean working really hard and making sure that your child is taken care of and never misses a practice while you're working to provide for that kid? There are so many different definitions of success. And, I think that whenever people recognize that they can take control of their own lives and determine what success looks like for them and their own identity, it's so powerful.
That's so cool. Yeah, I've said this before, but I'll say it again. It's like long before the Better Life Tribe and before Atomic Habits, I was researching for years, the intention journal for Bigger Pockets that I wrote. And I bought a bunch of different journals. I read a bunch of different stuff, and I researched a ton on the internet. Well, the main source I used for information on the journal and like just everything we do today with habits and all that was James Clear, Atomic Habits, before he had written it. And so I read his blog like religiously. And so anyway, I like to say that the Better Life Tribe is like an unofficial cousin of Atomic Habits. Someday we'll get James Clear to endorse us or something. Because I'm like, it was like his research kind of like led to this. Now,
that's amazing.
So anyway, that makes a lot of sense. Like we do identity-based goal setting, and we talk a lot about identity and the power of the habits that you do and the actions you do and the goals and all that. So, all right, number 1, Atomic Habits. What else?
Absolutely. The second one was Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, creating win-wins for people and understanding that good negotiations, again, starts with communication. Yeah. And that is huge. And the last one actually is a book that I don't know if a lot of people have read, but it's Annie Duke's Thinking in Bets.
Yeah, I actually like that book.
I love that I love that book. Yes. Annie Duke was a professional poker player. And one of my big takeaway from that, honestly, was a lot of times people, as like people, we have a tendency to associate the quality of the outcome with the quality of the decision. So if you get a bad outcome, it's very easy to assume that you made a bad decision. Whenever you could have made very good, reasonable, healthy decisions, and something outside of your control ended up resulting in the bad outcome.
That's great. And probably vice versa too.
Yep.
You can associate a positive outcome with a
Absolutely.
positive decision. Yeah.
It's like, no, that was a terrible decision.
Yeah, she talks a bit about like the asymmetric bets and that, and about like, and this is where I argue in terms of like, I teach about thinking in averages. And a lot of it was inspired by the work she did in that book, which is like, if you go to 10 conferences and 8 of them don't give you any partners or money and you can't raise any money, you don't meet anybody that's right for you. And then the 9th conference you go to, you find the partner that makes you millions of dollars and you get unlimited funding because of that one conference. Like the other 8 or 9 that didn't affect that doesn't mean they were failures. Like they weren't bad decisions and the one was a good decision. The good decision was going to conferences and going to events, going to meetups, because on average, you will always win. And that's what a poker player would think is like you play. Yeah, if you've got a 55% chance of winning, you play it every single time. Yeah. Doesn't mean you win every time, but on average, over time, you always win. So
absolutely.
Duke, she's awesome.
Asymmetric bets changed my life.
Yeah. Good, man.
It really did.
Me too. All right, moving on. That's the 3 books. I love them.
All right. Two pivot people. Who are 2 people that have changed the direction of your life?
2 people that have changed the direction of my life. One was my daughter.
Love it.
And she has made me a better person. And I think, it's really funny. Just quick side note. I was looking back in journals whenever I was a kid, because I'm a big journaler. It's like a way that I process information. And whenever I was like 12, I prayed for wisdom because I wanted to be like Solomon. He was like, and I was just reminiscing through this journal, and then Sophia's name is Sophia Catherine, and that means pure wisdom. And awesome. I thought that was a really neat little connection there. But you gain a lot of wisdom as a parent, and it definitely forces you to level up your standards and just everything that you do.
Changes everything. That's amazing.
Changes everything. And the second person actually was Gretchen, who was my running mate. And so I'll go back to that story and touch on it just a little bit. So within the 3 to 4 months after my training began, someone in our running club asked Gretchen the race that she was training for. And she was like, oh yeah, I'm training, she named the race. And I was like, oh nice, how many miles is that? And she goes, 50. And I was like, my jaw just hit the floor. I was just overwhelmed with humility. And I looked at her and I was like, Gretchen, first of all, you have no business running with me. I was like, you are overqualified to be running with me. And and she was like, well, of course I would run with you. She just has that personality, and she's like, of course I would have run with you. Like you needed to be trained. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I walked away from that conversation with it was probably the most humbling moment of my life, because someone who is an ultra marathon runner walked with me when I couldn't run. And I immediately knew that is what I also wanted my legacy to be.
Beautiful. What about a quote? What's a quote that you live your life by, or that's changed the direction of your life?
A quote that I live by. I would say it's more of the framework of if people couldn't hear anything that I said and only watched what I did, would I be who I say I am? Yeah. And something that I was actually reading, we're doing a Bible study of John right now. And we were talking about Jesus, and like, how people will say something like, we're out of integrity with ourselves, or out of alignment with, our habits are out of alignment with, who we say we are. Whenever they were talking about Jesus and the integrity that he walked in and lived in, one of my favorite definitions of integrity, I found it, and it said that integrity is something that is internally sound and internally like all together all the time. And I was like, whoa. Like because if you are internally like together all the time, then your actions will be in alignment with who you say you are. And so I think that framework is something that I've chosen to like live by, and it's so powerful. Yeah.
Wonderful. It's amazing. We're going to move into the next section, past you, present you, future you.
Okay.
And so if you could go back to 20-year-old you, what advice would you give her?
That's a really good question. That's a really powerful question. Annie Duke had framed that for me really well. And I would tell myself that with the information that you have, making the best decision that you know to make at the time is going to be the thing that serves you the best, rather than determining your success or failure based on the outcome.
Yeah.
Was that the book? That might have been the book, but it might have been another book that explains the same concept, but that talked about when Pete Carroll made the call for the Seahawks. Do you remember that? And it was
yes,
like,
it
was the right call.
Yeah, it was
Yes.
the right call,
Yes.
even though it was,
Yes. Yes, that was
even
it.
though it lost the game, everyone's like, oh, he's an idiot. And like everyone, but it was the right call. It
Analytics says that
analytics
like
said it was
80% of the time that's successful
would've worked.
versus running
Yep.
was like 40%. So he made the right
Made the
call,
right call,
just
yeah.
the wrong outcome.
Yeah.
And so you can't judge an outcome based on based on a decision. Cool. Love it. What is currently your number one rule for living a better life?
My better rule?
Yeah. What's your rule for living a better life? Your better rule.
My better rule. I would say that knowing my values and then finding a community that also has the same values is currently the thing that I'm living by.
Cool.
Yeah.
Beautiful. All right.
Love it. All right. And then you're in Sophia. That's your
Sophia.
Sophia. She's 7 years old today. Okay. So when she grows up and she's hanging out with friends and they are all talking about their parents and they ask, what was your mom like? What do you want her to tell her friends?
I want her to tell her friends that her mom loved the Lord, her mom loved her, and that there was nothing that she could do that would ever change that. I hope that she would describe me as a hard worker and as someone who loved other people.
All right, Millie, let's wrap things up. 2 more questions. First one, what are you excited about in the near future? What's coming up?
Ooh, more investment properties.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. And what am I excited about? We have a lot of traveling planned for this year and we love to travel. So that's something I'm excited about.
All right.
Yeah.
Love it. And then where can people find you at? Where Instagram handle, TikTok, website, any of that?
So everything is just my name, just Millie Pendola on Instagram, milliependola.com. And
what about as an agent? If they want to use you, they live in Eastern Tennessee.
yeah, absolutely. So I work primarily with investors who are out of state. So anyone can find me and set up time to chat with me on my website. There's a contact me form and they can book a time on my calendar.
Love it.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right, Millie, appreciate you. You're awesome.
Cool.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Dude, it's been a blast. Boom.